Apologies for the unwieldy title, but it will hopefully become clear why I'm talking about all those things. So I'm Phil Sutcliffe. I'm managing partner at a company called Nexxt Intelligence Inc. Now, if you didn't submit a paper for this event, you might not know there was various submission categories, I think about 6 in total, and I felt I could kind of touch on a few of them. So today I'm going to talk to elements of all of these 3 areas. So firstly, a new lens on engagement and fraud, so kind of talking about how we create more engaging experiences for people, how conversational AI can be a factor helping against fraud. Talking about a very practical consideration, so conversational AI is tried and tested application of AI. It works, it delivers better insight for researchers, it delivers better experiences for participants, which really relates to what does good look like today, which is all about doing that, better data for better insight for researchers and better experiences for participants. So I'm going to talk about 3 topics, fun, anonymity and relevance. So that's what's so far. So I'm going to kick off with fun. So what we're doing with conversational AI really is we're kind of reimagining the survey experience. Now if you think about a survey, it tends to be one-directional. People are asked questions, they answer a number of choices or scales. Conversations really are everything that surveys on. Some surveys can be engaging, can be good for people, but there's an awful lot of poor surveys out there. Surveys are one-directional, conversations are two-way. Conversations involve listening as much as talking. Conversations can find out things that's surprising. Conversations can be fun. They can be emotional, which if you're a researcher is great because you want to get to emotionals. So conversations can be very insightful. So there's lots of benefits in why as humans we have conversations, so why don't we do surveys in a more conversational way? So that's what we're trying to achieve with conversational AI. And in a nutshell, what we're doing is we are changing the people who take our surveys from respondents who sort of passively click buttons and make their choices in a one-way interaction to people who are participants in a two-way conversation. If you're a participant, you tend to be more engaged in the experience. If you've not seen a conversational AI survey before, I'm just going to show you a little excerpt of one, just so you can see what it's like. Hopefully this will work. So you can see it's chatbot led, it looks and feels more like a WhatsApp conversation. In the survey, you can make it very visual because it's a conversation and kind of replicating how people communicate on WhatsApp. You can use lots of emojis and so on. You can still ask all the questions you'd ask in a survey, sort of scale and choice-based questions. But because it's conversational, we ask lots of open-ended questions. So here's an open-ended question. Can you describe holiday you? If you describe the holiday you to a close friend who's never been on holiday with you, what would be the most surprising thing about the holiday that you tell them? So the person answers. And that's where the AI comes in. So after the person says that the way I dress is completely different, the AI probes. So interesting, how is the way you dress different on holiday compared to when you're at home? And then the person answers that, and we get to an extra sort of layer, more depth of information. Here's another example you're going to see now. What are some of the ways in which you're more yourself on holiday? And the participant says I relax more, less stressed, and more open to chatting with people. So again, the AI has been trained to come back with a probe that's relevant to what they just said in the context of the original question. So you see here, it's a good probe. Why does being more relaxed and open to chatting to people make you feel more like yourself on holiday? And when the person answers that, we actually get to more understanding in terms of what they're given in that first answer, and actually we get to understand a bit more of the emotion around the particular topic. As you can see, I feel more comfortable in my own skin, being more friendly, relaxed and open, how I want to feel. So I'm going to stop it there, because you get the idea, hopefully, of what it's like. And it does create a more fun and more engaging experience for participants. Quite often we'll ask questions like this at the end: compared to other surveys you've done, how would you rate this survey experience? And across countries and cultures, almost everyone says it's better, more than half say it's a lot better. But the reasons why are instructive. People tell us not only is it fun and engaging, they feel like they're talking to a real person. They can express their thoughts and feelings. It makes you feel like your opinions matter in your head, which is quite important if we want to learn things from people, right? Here's another example. In this case, the kind of 3 key themes came out of it. It's engaging, it's like talking to someone. The interactive element of it feels like instant messaging. It's easy to complete, it's user-friendly, felt more like I'm having a conversation about things I like. And from a researcher perspective, most importantly, the last one, it encourages people to express their opinion. So it has to be a good thing if our research participants are saying things like, it's a lot better being able to write my opinions down rather than having to click boxes which often don't currently reflect my opinion, or it gives me more room for expression. So it's a more engaging experience, it's more fun. This can actually also have an impact, which is good, on data quality, and not just on the amount of verbatim we get. This was some research we did with one of the big panels, who will remain nameless. But we did a regular online survey with the same profile of people on the same panel. We also did a conversational AI survey, essentially the same topics, but just kind of structured a bit differently through conversational AI. At the beginning of the survey, we asked people, it was in the US, we asked people what smartphone brand they owned, had a bunch of other questions, and towards the end we said, here's a load of smartphone brands, please rank your top 3. Now our hypothesis was, with Apple iPhone being so dominant in the US, that if you own an iPhone, you're very likely to rank it as your top phone. That's what happened with the conversational AI survey, 92%. With a traditional survey, it was only 58%. Why? Well, our hypothesis is, within that traditional survey, which wasn't very engaging, there were a lot of people just kind of clicking boxes to get through it as quickly as they can and not paying as much attention. So, that's fun. Different dimension now, I'm going to talk about anonymous and some of the benefits of an anonymous chatbot experience. Now, people often say to me, it's a chatbot. Don't people hate chatbots? Well, yes, they do in the context in which we mostly come across chatbots, which is a customer service application. So you're on a website, you're trying to get an answer to something, and you just kind of feel like throwing the computer out the window because you just can't get the answer you want, and you really want to talk to a real person. In that context, chatbots can be very annoying. Here, it's a very different context. We're not using a chatbot to answer questions for us, we're using a chatbot to ask questions for us. And our frame of reference isn't where the alternative would be talking to a real person, it's where the alternative is probably doing a fairly dull, regular survey. So, we find that this gives us a lot richer information from verbatims and open ends. Apologies for all the kind of the noisiness of this chart, but just to explain this little case study, we did something in Canada where we asked people an open-ended question about their impressions of each of the 3 political leaders in the country. We then used AI to probe the answers they gave us. Then we compared what response we got without the probing and with the probing. So the first thing to say is we got quite a lot more verbatim. So just asking that extra question, it's not just doubling it, it's actually almost 3 times. So it enables people to be more considered and tell us more. Secondly, we got more differentiated findings. When we coded the themes we were getting from the open ends, we found twice as many significant differences across the 3 leaders with probing, and we found that those differences were much more nuanced. Half of them related to specific policies when we added the probing versus 3 out of 11 without. And then, most importantly, again for the researcher, it led to more actionable insights. When we looked at the degree to which that verbatim helped explain voting intention, there were far more strengths that explained why somebody would vote for a candidate with the probing, and also more than twice as many kind of reasons why they would not vote for the candidate. Now, in terms of anonymity, we've got a fairly small pool of evidence so far, but we're seeing some quite interesting things. So this was a partner of ours, an agency called Differentology, who worked with a media agency called 7 Stars. And they did a conversational AI survey asking people about their finances and their behaviours in the finance category and their attitudes. And they graded the open-ended questions they asked in terms of sensitivity. So a high sensitivity question, for example, would be asking people about their personal financial circumstances and maybe the kind of stresses and strains they may have around their financial lives. What they found was, as they moved from a medium to a high sensitivity topic, in a regular survey, people said a bit less, so maybe they climbed up a little bit. With a conversational AI survey, they actually said quite a lot more. It enabled people to feel like they could say more. And when you look at the delta in terms of the absolute, so the conversational AI survey versus regular survey, there's an average of an extra 13 words per participant. So getting, for more sensitive topics, there's indications that anonymity of speaking to a chatbot actually helps people open up a little bit more. Related to that, I think we're seeing some interesting data points about representation. Now, I'm not saying, we've got a big issue with lack of representation of different groups within market research. I'm not saying this is the answer by any means, but it might be a part of the solution. Because when we look at underrepresented groups in market research, here's an example from Canada. So I'm going to start with kind of looking at age. Younger people are less likely to take surveys, as we know. When we look at that comparison of a regular survey versus a conversational AI survey, it's even more positive for the youngest group. When we look at ethnicity, a multicultural audience versus general population audience, it was also even greater for a multicultural audience. Turning to the UK, again in the Differentology study, they asked a question about, does this survey allow me to express myself better than other surveys? And again, when we looked at minority ethnic, or when they looked at minority ethnic and people with disabilities, it was even higher than it was for the general population, and significantly higher than for the traditional survey. So there's something there that seems to suggest that having this more engaging, more conversational, yet anonymous interaction with a chatbot could be an enabler of people feeling more comfortable in the survey environment. Third and final topic I'm going to talk about is relevance. So this is really to do with detecting irrelevant answers in surveys and how we can use the answers people give to open-ended questions and use AI to detect the quality of the answers. So, you'll be familiar with quite often in a survey context, open-end, someone saying, don't know, or yes or no, or uninformative answer. Or worse than that, just kind of a complete gibberish answer. Or some people try and game the system by giving a completely irrelevant answer to the question that was asked. Now, first thing we do is we actually try and encourage people to give us a better answer. So here's an example. What do you think of this ad? Don't know. In this case, the probe would be, I hear you, but please could you explain to me a bit more? So we're trying to essentially make a lazy participant a better one and give us a better quality answer. Or if they give us gibberish, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you please explain why you're being liked by this product? Now, oftentimes that actually helps. And somebody who has been lazy and trying to kind of speed through it actually thinks, okay, I need to kind of tell them something here, and we do get a better answer. But what we can also do is we can use these answers that people give us and use the AI to assess the quality of the answers. So one way to do that is through what we call the demerit score, where we essentially kind of score each response between 0 and 1. It's a bit counterintuitive because 0 is very good and 1 is very bad. But we can give a score to each answer. So to give a couple of examples, here somebody gives complete gibberish. The AI is very confident that's a bad quality answer, so it gives it a score of 1. What it's really measuring is the AI's confidence that this is a good or poor quality answer. Somebody says it's okay, so what did you like about the ad? It's fairly sure it's not such a good answer, it gives it a score of 0.6. And as a rule of thumb, anything above about 0.5 we tend to classify as a not particularly good answer that you'd want to keep in your final data set. On the other hand, if someone says I found the main character really funny, yeah, very confident, that's a good answer, has a demerit score of 0. Now, what about the issue of relevance, the kind of the cucumber is green type of answer? What we can do here is brief the AI for what it needs to look for. So imagine this question: what did you like about this app? Somebody says that I can easily edit my photos. On the face of it, that seems a reasonable answer. The AI also thinks it's probably a pretty good answer. It gives it a low demerit score of 0.3. However, if we brief the AI and we say a couple of sentences about what we want to do with this question. So in this case, we want to catch people who don't know anything about this app, which is designed to help people book their summer holidays. Now if somebody said the answer, I can easily edit my photos, it knows that's an irrelevant answer. So we get a demerit score of 0.9. So again, this isn't about detecting fraud in surveys, but it's a part of the puzzle about how we can first encourage people to give us better answers, and then if they're giving poor quality answers, how we can detect that and use this demerit score either to clean them out afterwards or actually screen them out live during the survey. So to summarise, so far so good, because these 3 elements of fun, anonymity and relevance. Firstly, fun, we're creating better participant experience. By creating better experiences for our participants, they're going to think more, they're going to give us more considered answers, we'll get better quality data. Secondly, anonymity, we think there's something interesting there, it's something we'd like to explore more, but it seems that the anonymity of speaking to a chatbot, especially when a chatbot asks good questions, encourages people both to be more honest and for underrepresented groups, potentially makes them feel more included. And thirdly, in terms of relevance, the ability to be able to assess the quality of people's open-ended answers using AI is something that can be part of the solution against fraud. So that's my 20 minutes. Thank you.
We have questions. That first hand up over there.
Our question. Really interesting. Actually, today we were just filtering some evil social media data by asking, I think, GPT, is this relevant? Because it was very noisy data, and it was really good at doing that. And that's really interesting. Do you think, in terms of cost and time, it's a big overhead on the survey? I mean, the survey's a lot longer. I mean, is it adding a lot of cost?
That's a good question. Obviously, it depends how many open-ended questions you have and how many times you probe on each one. Right. But in a typical 10 to 15 minute survey, we find you might have 3 or 4 opens, so you're adding probably only a couple of minutes. So it's not a great deal, no. But more interestingly than that, we've done research on research where we know how long it takes people. So we've done side-by-side regular survey versus kind of conversational AI survey, and we've found it takes 10, 15, 20% longer. But if you ask people, how long do you think the survey took? They thought it took less time with the conversational AI and longer with the regular survey. So, kind of there's one panel we work with, they've actually started having a conversation with them, say you shouldn't just be kind of charging people by length of interview, you should kind of have some kind of metric of engagement.
Big Pat, a question next then, Corinne.
Yeah. Sorry, and actually it's a bit linked to what you answered there, because the number of probes, you were showing sort of examples of a single probe.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you have multi-probe,
Mm-hmm.
and have you done any work to understand, because at some point it might get a bit noisy.
Yeah.
And why would you, and that's interesting, and how many times does it put where it puts people off?
I think that depends on a number of factors, really. It's where your sample's coming from. You know, what we found is if you're using panel sample, you can ask, you know, there is a certain limit, but then it also depends on the topic. If you've got an interesting topic, people are kind of more willing to kind of tell you more than maybe for a less interesting topic. I mean, we have got one client that does 10-minute interviews that is nearly all open-ended with panel sample, and they get a good deal of insight from it. I think probably beyond that, you're probably pushing it. But similarly, we've had qualitative recruits that could be 45 minutes long. So yeah, it depends on a number of factors.
Sorry, just so does the AI decide how many probes, or do you?
At the moment, we predefine.
Okay.
There's a bit of kind of subtlety around it. So, for example, you can set targets of certain things you want to probe on.
Yeah.
So, if you set 3 targets and someone mentions 2 of them, it will probe twice.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Corinne, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think particularly with the quad, but also with the quad, can you do this with voice for your recommended?
And with our system, there are conversational AI systems that do have voice. The ones I've seen so far, they're just asking open-ended questions. What we do is a combination of the quant and the qual. We're going to have voice from August, so we're testing it in beta at the
You're
moment.
testing it?
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry, can I ask a rider as well, which is a bit cheeky, but I know it's a kind of a bit of a niche, but if you're doing, so when you've done the research on research and you sort of see improvements, to what extent does that increase when you're looking more in the area of sort of maybe social research on non-online panel samples? So where you've got, you know, able represented and non-professional respondents, let's say.
It's an interesting question. I can't answer it, unfortunately, because
Okay.
nearly all the work
Just
we've done is with
yeah.
panel sample,
Yeah.
and certainly all the research on research
Yeah.
we've done is with being with panel
Yeah.
sample.
Yeah. Okay.
Or one comment, which is, but there was a discussion yesterday, but I've looked through my notes, I can't find it now, but it was on this idea of quality and demerits and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the idea yesterday of actually scoring people as they went through and possibly giving them a bonus at the end of the thing to say, you know, actually we thought it was rather good. That was quite a fun idea. My second question is, so in the old days, the survey was very orderly. You start here and you go and that's it, and you do your data analysis. It's all fine.
Yeah.
This is turns into the data is messier.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going off in different directions.
Yeah.
When it comes to analysing all of that, what's the approach? Are you really treating it as a qual survey effectively,
Yeah.
more than a quant?
Well, I mean, there's still some structure, because at least from what we do, it's a mix of kind of, you know,
Yeah.
the research program still, you know, choice and scale-based questions. So there's still that structure there, but very often we'll follow up a, you know, 5-point scale with a why do you say that open-ended question, and then we probe on the open-ended question.
Yeah.
What we do when we've got the first response and then the probe response for coding is actually we stick them together to create one long debate here. And our theory there is really all the probe is doing is helping the person tell us more against the context of the first
But you do
answer.
go through a sort of coding process
Yeah.
or summarisation
If we're
process.
doing it at a sort of quantitative scale.
Yeah, okay.
Ask one quick question.
Mm.
So, is this specific to your tool, or can you plug parts of this into other survey systems?
You can take, we offer the probing part as an API which plugs into our
Right,
survey
right.
system. So I mean, that's with research agencies, that's mostly what we do actually.
Okay.
Just from a cost perspective, do you trust it enough to set it up and just let it go, or do you need somebody, a team of people that are monitoring the conversation, the interview as it's happening?
No, you can let it go, because that's all in the training we've given it with kind of a lot of training data. That, for example, the probe that is returned, what's happening in the background is the AI has generated 5 or 6 probes, and there's a number of kind of rules that have been established based on training that we've done that is checking for things like, is this probe inappropriate, or is this probe asking for personal information, or is this probe a leading question? And if it kind of fails one of those tests, it's going to pick another probe. So essentially we've trained it to, with kind of fairly low degree of tolerance to kind of not say anything that's inappropriate or off subject.
Right, so do you get more dropouts, terminates when you use it?
Not a great deal, because it's more engaging. I mean, we typically, you know, with the quality checks we do, we lose about 5% on average, so
Okay.
not a massive amount.
One last question. I think that's pretty good. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you very much.